He took the explosion shrapnel to save the alien girl, then awoke surrounded by... Neon banners shimmered above the Helion Trade Promenade, projecting drifting glyphs and swirling light. Rhett Callahan paused beneath them, wiping mech grease off his palms onto his coveralls. The air smelled of ozone spice and engine coolant. The signature cocktail of this floating city in orbit around a purple gas giant. Keep moving, human. A scaled merchant growled as Rhett stared a little too long at the stall's crystalline fruit. He held up his hands in mock surrender and walked on, boots clunking on metal flooring that vibrated faintly with the heartbeat of the station's drive core. Ahead, a royal entourage cut through the foot traffic. Tall figures in lacquered armor, their cloaks trailing like molten gold. In the center walked a small, silver-furred child. He recognized her instantly. Princess Kyare. Alone among warriors, she looked lost, her luminous eyes darting at sights she didn't understand. Rhett didn't know why, but he slowed and watched. A sound snapped through the air, a high-pitched whine. His hackles rose. The crowd's murmur faded beneath a bone-deep instinct. Something was wrong. He turned, just as a magnetic charge detonator skittered across the floor, spinning toward the child like a toy. The guards reacted too slow. Rhett moved before he thought. Boots slammed metal. Someone shouted. The detonator blossomed in a flash of white and rippling shock. He threw himself over the princess, instinct screaming, arms curling around her tiny, trembling form. Heat, pressure, sound torn apart. Shrapnel tore through his back, searing fire down his spine. He tasted blood and electricity. Kyare whimpered beneath him. No royal control, just fear. Alarms wailed. The promenade vanished into smoke and debris. His ears rang. He tried to breathe, but something felt heavy, sinking him into darkness. The girl's hand clutched his wrist with surprising strength. "You protected me," she whispered, voice shaking like glass in wind. He wanted to laugh. How was that surprising? "It's what we do," he mumbled, coughing blood onto metal. Her guards finally reached them, ripping him away far too late. They lifted her, weapons drawn, voices barking orders. But the princess leaned toward him, silver fur streaked with ash. "I won't let you die," she whispered, and for just a flicker her eyes glowed with something ancient. Oath or instinct, he couldn't tell. He smiled despite fading vision. "Sweet deal, kid." Then the floor rushed up, the alarms dissolved into distant hums, and the neon banners above blurred into shifting constellations. The last sensation before everything went dark was her small hand refusing to let go, until someone forced her fingers free. Rhett fell into silence, unaware that one foolish human act had just rewritten the fate of an empire. Sound returned before sight, a pulsing thrum like distant thunder, steady as a heartbeat. Rhett floated, weightless, cradled in cool liquid that tasted metallic against his tongue. For a moment, he thought he was dead, drifting in some sterile afterlife. Then light speared through the darkness. He jerked, or tried to. His limbs moved sluggishly, suspended by something thicker than water. A soft chiming vibration rippled through the chamber, and the fluid began to drain. Translucent walls shimmered around him, inscribed with alien sigils that rearranged themselves like living script. He coughed hard as air replaced liquid, collapsing forward, only to be caught by unseen arms. "Easy," a voice rumbled, deep and reverent. Rhett blinked crusted lashes open. 3 towering figures in plated armor stood over him, their faceless helms reflecting pale blue medlights. Behind them, Kyare unharmed, fur brushed and regal, her eyes fixed on him with startling intensity. "What?" His throat scraped like sand. "You live," she breathed, stepping closer. She was so small among them, like a candle in a forge. "I kept my oath. A healer, slender, translucent skin veined with glowing green. Pressed a palm to Rhett's chest. Tingling warmth spread under his skin. Bone fragments extracted. Lung laceration sealed. Regeneration incomplete. One armored guard snapped his jaws in disgust. This human is fragile. Too fragile to... Kare's voice cut like a blade. He bled for me. You will show him honor. Rhett tried to sit up, instinctively bracing for punishment. Humans didn't touch alien royalty without consequences. But no one struck him. Instead, the tallest guard knelt, presenting a ceremonial blade across his gauntlets. Rhett Callahan, Cuz said, voice steady despite her trembling fingers. You are under royal protection until debt is fulfilled. Royal protection. Not arrest. Not execution. Chaos swirled through Rhett's thoughts. You don't owe me anything, he rasped. I just did what anyone should. The guard's helm tilted, unreadable. No, only humans would do such a thing, without calculation. Kare's gaze softened. You acted without knowing who I was. Rhett swallowed, suddenly aware how alien the chamber smelled. Incense, disinfectant. Something mineral and cold. The floor hummed beneath his bare feet. The entire room breathing with subtle machinery. So what now? He asked, reaching for dry ground. Kare lifted her chin. Now you heal, and learn why some believe you unworthy of surviving. One guard shifted, a challenge, a warning. The healer eased Rhett to a platform, wrapping him in shimmering fabric that tightened automatically to stabilize his ribs. He winced but forced a grin. Humans do unworthy pretty well, he muttered. To his surprise, a couple of the armored giants emitted chuffing sounds. Their version of laughter. Kare watched it with a look he didn't understand. Part gratitude, part curiosity, part something dangerously close to admiration. Rest human, she whispered. The world you change is waking too. Outside the med chamber, heavy doors sealed with a hiss. The hum of engines deepened, a starship preparing for movement. Rhett closed his eyes, unaware that honor among aliens came with sharp edges, and he was now tethered to power he barely comprehended. Rhett didn't remember walking the hall of the Cord, but he remembered the smell, scorched incense and cold iron. The chamber stretched like an inverted cathedral, ribs of blackstone arching overhead, etched with shifting constellations. Alien dignitaries watched from tiered balconies, their eyes gleaming like predators sizing prey. Kare walked ahead of him, cloaked in ceremonial white. Rhett followed in borrowed tunic and half-working boots, feeling painfully underdressed. The human grease stains on his sleeves stood out against polished armor and embroidered silks. A gong sounded, its resonance vibrating directly through his bones. Rhett Callahan, the herald intoned, voice amplified through unseen emitters. You are summoned to receive acknowledgement. A captain stepped forward, towering, horned, armor carved with ancient battle scripts. Rhett recognized him from the med chamber. Tovar, the one who thought humans too fragile to matter, stepped forth human. Tovar said, voice rich with disdain. Rhett forced himself forward. Yeah, here, he muttered, earning a hiss from someone above. Kare gave him a tiny flicker of reassurance, a glance barely perceptible, but it helped. Tovar drew a blade longer than Rhett's arm. Its surface flickered with shifting light, alive or nearly so. You shielded the air at cost to your flesh, the captain declared, tone formal. A noble deed, but nobility does not grant stature. Rhett breathed in slowly. The hall smelled of hot metal and old arguments. I didn't do it for stature, he said. I didn't even know who she was. Murmurs rippled, outrage to some, fascination to others. Tovar's helm angled. Exactly. No sane being would risk death without calculation. Rhett shrugged. Humans do stupid heroic stuff. It's kind of our brand. The hall froze. Then several dignitaries exchanged startled glances. A few even chuckled. Kyra stepped up beside him. "Your honor code differs from ours," she said softly but firmly. "I bind his life to mine." The entire chamber erupted. Disbelief, anger, whispers. Tolvar took a step back, his blade lowering. "That binding is unacceptable. His bloodline is unknown. His strength insufficient." Kyra's silver fur bristled. "Yet he did what our strongest did not." Her words crashed through the chamber like another explosion. Tolvar knelt, but stiffly. "As you command, heir." The ceremony concluded. A mark of alien blood painted across Rhett's collarbone, sealing the bond. The substance burned like liquid frost, making him gasp. Afterward, Kyra led him through a quiet side corridor. Bioluminescent vines climbed the walls, brushing his shoulders. "I didn't mean to embarrass you," Rhett said. "You did not," she replied. "You revealed truths they avoid." Rhett leaned against the wall, body aching from half-healed wounds and emotional whiplash. "So, I'm bound to you. What does that mean?" Kyra looked up, eyes luminous. "It means if you fall, I answer for it. And if I rise, you are not left behind." He exhaled, speechless. She hesitated, voice softer. "I chose it because you acted without expectation. That is rare here." Rhett chuckled weakly. "Back home, it's Tuesday." Kyra tilted her head, puzzled, then smiled. "Humans are strange." "Yeah," he said, rubbing the burning mark on his chest. "But sometimes strange gets things done." They continued walking, unaware that whispers were already spreading to the high tiers, of a fragile species that walked into fire without asking why. Rhett was still learning to walk the palace corridors without staring. The place felt alive, veins of glowing crystal pulse along the walls, and the air was thick with incense that smelled like heated copper and rain. Kyra walked ahead of him, calm as always, her tail flicking in thought. "Today is quieter," she said. "Fewer eyes on you." "Feels like more," Rhett muttered, rubbing the still tender scar beneath his collar. "Pretty sure I saw someone sketching me like an artifact." Kyra gave a soft chuff. Amusement, he guessed. She was about to speak when the corridor lights flickered. A vibration shuddered through the floor. Rhett froze. That sound too familiar. Not maintenance. Not idle machinery. Explosive resonance. The next instant, the far wall erupted inward in a roar of fire and shrapnel. Kyra cried out as pressure slammed them backward. Rhett hit the floor hard, ears ringing. Palace guards appeared from nowhere, weapons drawn, shouting in guttural command. Figures poured through the breach, masked, armored, moving like wraiths, blades humming with violet energy. Assassins. Rhett didn't think. He grabbed Kyra and rolled behind a fallen column. "Stay low." "You command me now," she hissed, but she stayed. Guards rushed in, but the assassins moved with terrifying purpose, bypassing them to reach Kyra. One vaulted over the debris toward them. Rhett's mind flashed with the promenade explosion, her small hand shaking, his blood on the floor. Not again. He snatched up a broken piece of crystalline architecture, sharp, jagged, and swung. The improvised shard slammed into the assassin's throat joint. Armor sparked. The alien staggered, hissing. Rhett didn't let them recover. He tackled the attacker, slamming his fist into exposed flesh until the figure went still. Pain throbbed in his knuckles. He barely noticed. Kyra stared, stunned. "You fight without training." "Winning's my training," Rhett grunted. Another attacker leapt from above, claws aimed for Kyra. Rhett shoved her aside, catching the impact himself. They rolled across the floor. The assassin slashed for his neck. Rhett jammed the jagged shard into the gap under the helmet. Violet light died in its eyes. More guards poured in, forming a shield wall around Kyare. Bolts of plasma fire streaked across the hall. The assassins retreated, vanishing back through the breach under covering smoke. The silence afterward was suffocating. Rhett's chest heaved, blood dripping from his palm. The hall smelled of scorched stone and ozone, undercut by something like crushed flowers. Alien blood. Captain Tovar peered through the settling dust, helm dented, blade crackling. You struck down elite killers with scrap, Tovar said, disbelief threading through his voice. Rhett shrugged, wiping blood on his sleeve. They were in my way. Kari stepped toward him, eyes wide, not scared, but something deeper. Reverence? Affection? Fear for him? You could have run, she whispered. Yeah, Rhett said, leaning against a shattered column. But I don't leave people behind. Tovar's helm dipped, the closest he came to a bow. Perhaps humans are not weak. Rhett winced as medics approached, but he couldn't stop grinning through blood and adrenaline. Don't worry, he said. We're stubborn, not strong. Yet Kare watched him like he had rewritten reality, as though every legend she'd ever learned had just shifted to make room for something human. The royal gardens were nothing like Earth's. The sky above wasn't sky at all, a dome projecting drifting auroras, casting blues and violets across glassy leaves. Strange flowers breathed tiny sparks when brushed, and bioluminescent vines curled lazily around crystalline pillars. Kari guided Rhett through quiet maze, her steps softer than usual. Guards kept distant, watching but pretending not to. You saved me again, she said at last, stopping beside a pool where fractal fish swam through liquid light. Rhett eased onto a bench carved from something warm and metallic. His knuckles were bandaged, his ribs aching. Yeah, he muttered. Not exactly a sustainable habit. She tilted her head, silver for catching the false starlight. You joke to hide pain? That and boredom, he said, forcing a crooked grin. Humans laugh when things hurt. It's either that or scream. Her ears flicked, fascinated. Your ways confuse me. Trust me, he said, watching the shimmering fish. They confuse us too. Silence settled, not awkward, but heavy. Finally she lowered herself beside him, her tail curling protectively. The truth, I am afraid, she admitted. I was not meant to be heir. My mother died. My father vanished into war. I was never taught to rule, only to be seen. Rhett turned, surprised. Royalty afraid? But her eyes, luminous and fragile, made the admission real. I know performance, she whispered. Not leadership. And someone wants me dead before I learn either. Rhett leaned back, exhaling. The dome hummed faintly overhead, light rippling like water. We fake it too, he said. Every human leader, pretending they know what they're doing. Confidence is an act, until it isn't. Kyare blinked. That sounds irresponsible. It's survival, he answered. If you wait to be ready, you die. She considered this, then looked at him again. You teach without meaning to. He shrugged. I talk. You listen sometimes. That's all. Her voice softened. And yet the others follow you. Even Captain Tovar. Rhett snorted. He tolerates me. He respects you, she corrected quietly. You fight without armor. You bleed without shame. You speak without calculation. It is bewildering. He scratched the scar on his collar. Humans don't have armor because we never had the luxury. We learn to stand anyway. Her gaze lingered on him, unreadable. Admiration edged with longing. You matter here, she said, barely audible. Rhett swallowed. Something in his chest tightened. I'm just a guy who didn't want a kid blown up. You changed destinies, she countered. The garden lights dimmed as night's cycle neared. The vines emitted soft blue glow, and somewhere distant engines hummed through the walls. The sound of starships shifting orbit. Kaya rose, offering him her hand. Walk with me. There is still war coming. Red accepted, standing despite aching bones. Sure, but I'm not wearing dress robes. She smiled, small, real. Perhaps our empire needs less ceremony and more human. They walked together beneath the false auroras. Two figures bound by accident and choice. The princess armored in expectation, and the human armed with stubbornness, both reshaping each other in ways neither yet understood. The alarms began in the dead cycle. Low, pulsing drones that rattled through the palace. Rhett shot upright from the couch he'd fallen asleep on, heart hammering. Outside his chamber, armored boots thundered past. The door slid open without command. Kyrie stood there, cloak half-fastened, fur bristled. They attack again. But not just here, everywhere. It is civil revolt. Rhett grabbed his boots and staggered into them. Where do you need me? Her eyes flashed, relief and fear mingled. With me? The corridors were chaos. Guards sprinting, blast shutters slamming into place, energy fractures cracking along walls. Distant detonations rippled through the structure. Smoke burned Rhett's nose as they entered the command tier, a circular chamber overlooking a holographic projection of the station under siege. Tolvar turned as they approached. The rebels breached 3 sectors. The air must retreat. No, Kyrie snapped. We stand. Tolvar hesitated, then bowed. Rhett didn't wait. He scanned the chamber. Technicians panicking, healers cowering, junior warriors frozen behind their shields. Hey, he barked, voice cutting through. If you can walk, you can fight. If you can't fight, you help someone who can. Move! Alien eyes turned, startled that a human, unarmed and scarred, dared command them. But they moved. Rhett grabbed a discarded plasma lance. Heavy as hell, awkward, but he slung it over his shoulder anyway. Tolvar, your elites block choke points. Kyrie, you're with me. We hold civilians. Kyrie nodded, pulse racing visible under her throat fur. They descended into the lower rings, corridors twisted with smoke, explosions shaking loose shards of crystal plating. A wounded guard staggered toward them. Rhett caught him before he fell, shoved him gently toward medics. We aren't dying today, Rhett growled. Kyrie watched him, the way others responded to certainty. How fear bent under his stubbornness. At the central nursery, a sanctuary for non-combatants, rebels tore through the entry line. Rhett charged without waiting for backup, swinging the lance like a club, cracking armor plates, shoving Kyrie behind shielded columns. Stay close, he barked. Kyrie ignored the order, instead stepping beside him, claws bared, voice rising in ancient battle command. Her people rallied, their air leading from the front. The fight was brutal. Rhett felt bruises bloom, tasted iron, saw sparks fly as plasma bolts ricocheted inches from Kyrie's face. But together, humans improvising, aliens disciplined, they forced the attackers back. Minutes stretched like hours until the rebels broke, retreating into smoke. Quiet fell. Rhett leaned against a shattered wall, lungs burning. Kyrie approached, trembling, adrenaline and something deeper. Without thinking, she reached up and touched the cut along his cheek. You should not have survived that, she whispered. Story of humanity, Rhett panted. We don't do what we should. We do what we have to. Tolvar entered, armor-stained. Victory is ours. The revolt, broken. You saved them. Kyrie turned to Rhett, her voice soft but ringing with consequence. You rewrote our legends, she said. Now what do you want to be? Rhett looked out over the smoking ruins, civilians emerging, guards saluting him, Kyrie's eyes shining with fierce pride. He didn't know the answer, not yet, But for the first time since arriving on this station, the future didn't feel like a sentence, it felt like choice. And that was the most human thing of all. The warship drifted above the newly liberated capital, its hull reflecting the pale swirl of the gas giant below. From the observation deck, Rhett leaned against the glass, feeling the steady pulse of engines underfoot, a heartbeat he had grown used to. Neon cities glittered on continents once locked in fear, now breathing again. Kyrie approached quietly, no guards trailing her now. Her white ceremonial cloak swayed like mist. For the first time, she didn't look like an heir, only a girl grown into the weight of her crown. "It is done," she said, voice soft. "They will rebuild, because you taught them to stand." Rhett gave a crooked smile. "I just yelled at people until they moved." "Humility," she murmured, stepping beside him. "Another human weapon no one recognizes until it has reshaped their world." They watched the starfield in silence. The hum of air recyclers, faint static from comm relays, distant engines threading through the moment. Kyrie reached for his hand. Her small, furred fingers curled into his calloused palm. "I fear less with you here," she confessed. Rhett squeezed her hand gently. "That's okay. I'm good at being here." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Stay. Walk beside me, not as protector, but as equal." He looked at their reflection in the window. Alien royalty and stubborn mechanic, improbable, ridiculous, perfect. "Yeah," he whispered. "Let's see if we can break a few more rules together." Outside, the warship turned toward stars uncharted. Two figures stood side by side, proof that sometimes the smallest act, shielding someone without asking why, could reroute empires and rewrite legends. And in the humming glow of the viewport, their joined hands became the newest one,